Mai ka makani o launi ui ke ahe o ka olu. E ki pa mai ka mehana I ka poli o ka ina niu hele vai. Paia e koleo. Aloha e aloha e aloha e.
Welina mai me ke aloha. Welcome and mahalo for joining me for the Print Your Own Reusable Utensil Kit tutorial. This activity is part of the 2022 Ho'olaule'a, a week-long celebration of our Mala o Niu Helewai, sustainability practices, and the Hawaiian culture. In today's activity, you will be learning a little about traditional Hawaiian printing while making a fun utensil kit that you can use every day. My name is Kalealoha Lamho, and I'm the coordinator of the Hawaiian Center at Honolulu Community College. It is my pleasure to provide this instructional video for you today. As I mentioned earlier, the Honolulu Community College's Ho'olaule'a is not just a celebration of Hawaiian culture, but it is also an event to encourage our campus to adopt more sustainable practices. Today's activity is specifically aimed at reducing plastic waste. As many of you know, plastic pollution plagues our beaches and waterways all over the world, but plastic straws and utensils are a particular culprit. According to habitsofwaste.org, in the U.S. alone, approximately 500 million plastic straws and 40 billion plastic forks, spoons, and knives are consumed and discarded each year. All that plastic goes from the landfill to the ocean, and as a result, over 100,000 marine animals and 1 million seabirds are killed each year. Hawaii is especially impacted by plastic pollution. As an island chain, each of our beaches are susceptible to plastic garbage buildup. According to the Hawaii Wildlife Fund, an estimated 15 to 20 tons of marine trash are washed up on our shores in Hawaii each year, 96% of which is made from plastic material. So what can you do to make a difference? Well, for starters, we can stop using single-use plastic straws, forks, knives, and spoons. In 2021, Hawaii passed Bill 40, which requires that all restaurants stop providing disposable utensils unless they have been requested, and in some cases, they may even charge a fee. By using your own reusable utensils, you are preventing billions of pieces of trash from ending up in the ocean. In our activity today, you will be able to customize your own reusable utensil kit. Each kit comes with a bamboo spoon, knife and fork, a stainless steel straw, and a slim canvas pouch to hold your utensils. The kit is small enough to slip in your lunchbox, your backpack, your purse, even your back pocket. In the tutorial, you will learn how to make the modern version of a traditional Hawaiian stamp that you can use to print your utensil kit, and customize lots of other things like bags, towels, gift bags, cards, and more. Before we get into the demonstration, I wanted to share a little bit about traditional Hawaiian stamping. Prior to the introduction of cotton, Hawaiians used a plant called wauke, also referred to as paper mulberry, to make kapa, their fabric. Kapa was used for clothing, bedding, and more. The bark of the wauke plant, pictured here, was stripped and soaked for several days before being beaten with a wooden mallet called an iekuku. The process took several days, but the resulting fabric was incredibly strong and breathable. There are even samples of kapa in museums throughout the world that are over 200 years old. There are many mo'olelo or traditional stories about kapa. One mo'olelo originates in our neighboring Ahupua'a. At Pu'iwa in Nu'uanu, A farmer named Maikoha lived with his daughters Lauhuiki and Laahana. Maikoha became ill, and the cold, rain, and wind from the valley made it worse. Eventually, he realized that he did not have much longer to live. So on his deathbed, he instructed his daughters to bury his body close to the waters of the stream that flowed near their hale. He told them that a tree would grow from his burial place, and they were to use the bark of the tree to make kapa cloth that they could use to make clothing and blankets to keep warm. When he died, his daughters fulfilled his request, and as he said, a tree they had never seen before grew from the place they buried their father. The tree was called Vauke. The daughters used the bark to create kapa, and eventually more Vauke trees spread throughout Hawaii and Polynesia. Maikoha is recognized as the aumakua for kapa makers. His daughter Lauhuiki is the aumakua of those who pound and prepare the bark of the Vauke. She has the power to find kapa in the bark of Vauke trees and teach how to bound. She also blesses the labor of those who worship her. Maikoha's other daughter, Laahana, is the aumakua associated with the marked clubs or iekuku used to create a watermark on the kapa. It was said that she learned how to make these implements using shark's teeth to scratch the clubs. She was also able to teach this skill to others. The demigod Maui's mother Hina is also said to be one of the greatest kapa makers. We can still see her skill today in the form of clouds in the sky. She lays them in sheets in the sky and holds them down with rocks. When the wind blows the sheets and the rocks fall off, you hear this in the form of thunder. When she folds her sheets of kapa together, they glisten and flash in the light of the sun and create lightning. Hawaiians have been recognized for their ingenuity in decorating their kapa. Kapa would be beaten with patterned iekuku to leave watermarks. Aromatic plants were used to scent the kapa, and ohe kapala or stamps with intricate designs carved into them were used to print repeating patterns on the kapa textiles. These stamps were carved into narrow strips of ohe or bamboo using very sharp obsidian or shark's teeth. Traditional designs were bold, geometric, and often symmetrical. Many of the examples we see in museums and lithographs are similar to the patterns we find on tattoos, lauhala mats, and gourds. The designs often depicted elements of nature, family, and values. These examples from the book Arts and Crafts of Hawaii by Te Rangi Hiroa demonstrate the bold designs that have been found on kapa artifacts in the Bishop Museum. As you can see, the designs are highly intricate, boldly geometric, and often symmetrical. Typically, a kapa maker would print one stamp several times on a piece of kapa to create a repeated pattern. Oftentimes, a symbolic representation of a plant or a natural element was used. Designs can be interpretive. For example, looking at a specific part of a plant and incorporating that into the design rather than drawing out the whole plant. The word kauna is loosely interpreted as symbolism, and Hawaiians took ideas for their designs from their surroundings. I will share a few examples of some plants that could be used in designs and their kauna. The kalo or taro is a Hawaiian staple food. It often represents ohana, ha'aha'a or humility, sustenance, and strength. It is also recognized as an ancestor to the Hawaiian race. There are many ways you could incorporate kalo into your design. Remember, you aren't looking to replicate a literal representation of the plant. Look at the different parts of the plant for inspiration. For example, you might be inspired by the piko or the center of the leaf, or the overall shape of the leaf, as shown in the example on the top. Or maybe you want to represent the stalks or the oha, as shown on the bottom example. Be creative in how you represent the plant in your design. Another example is the kukui leaf. Kukui represents na'awau, or wisdom and enlightenment, knowledge, light, and often is associated with the island of Molokai. In this design example, I took the veins from the center of the leaf and repeated the design to create a new pattern. The last example is the kupu-kupu fern. Kupu-kupu is often associated with the value of ha'aha'a, or humility, and kupono, or honesty, righteousness, and reliability. It is also associated with growth and new beginnings, as the word kupu means to surge forth. The example on the right shows how I took a portion of the leaf to create several repeated triangles that represents kupu-kupu to me. In today's activity, we will be using modern supplies to create our own kapala or stamp. Before we get into the demonstration, there are a few tips to remember regarding your design. When brainstorming your ideas, remember that the negative space, the parts that are cut away, are also a part of your design. You also want to keep your design simple. Remember that you will be printing this stamp several times, so the finished design will look different. Most importantly, as with any Hawaiian practice, you want to keep your thoughts pono throughout the process. That means no swearing, no negativity, and keeping a positive attitude. To help you with your own design process, I have compiled some resources to help you. A link to a Google document is included in your email that you can use to help inspire you for your design. And now let's move on to the tutorial demonstration.
Hi, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to demonstrate how to use the supplies in your kit that you picked up. So every kit should have your paper bag. You should have the little canvas bag to put your utensils in, and 4 utensils. So a bamboo fork, spoon, knife, and a stainless steel straw. In addition to that, every kit comes with a paint stick, and I'm going to explain what this is for in a few minutes. A little piece of sticky foam, and you'll have a little paint pot in your kits too. There are a couple of supplies you're going to need to get from home that we weren't able to include the kit, and that would be a pair of scissors or some kind of a cutting object. You could use a scalpel or a X-Acto knife if you want. You're also going to need a piece of scratch paper and some kind of a writing pen. I prefer to use ballpoint pens because you can get a better impression when you're working on your project, and either a brush or a sponge for the painting portion of the activity. So for the decorating part of this activity, what we're going to be doing is making a modern version of an ohe kapala, or a Hawaiian stamp. Instead of carving with bamboo, which you would do traditionally, and it's a lot more complicated, we're going to do a really easy activity that you can even do with your kids. So we hope you enjoy this activity. You're going to need your paint stick for this portion, the piece of foam stickies, your scratch paper, the scissors, and some kind of a pen or a pencil. So after you've taken some time to decide what you want in your design, and we included a handbook in our in the email, so you can get some ideas of different plants that you can use, or look at some ancient designs for some inspiration. What you want to do is think about what you want on your design. So you want to keep in mind that the dimensions of your stamp are only going to be within this stick. So you don't want anything that's going to be wider than 1 inch. And that's kind of about the same dimensions as a real stamp. Most traditional stamps are about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch wide. So this is a really good practice for a traditional stamp. So just kind of look at the stamp, think about how big you want it. You also want to look at the stamp, the canvas bag. You don't want something that's going to be so much wider than this, because it's not going to look good. After you've had some time to think about what design you want to do, you can start sketching it on your scratch paper. So one tip that I would do is to take the paint stick and you want to trace it on your paper so you have the outline of how wide you can make your design. Okay, so once you figure out how wide your paint stick is after you've traced the dimensions, then go ahead and start sketching out some ideas. So let's say, for example, you wanted some triangles. Then you could make a design like that. And again, remember, as we shared in the presentation, designs are usually symmetrical, geometric, and bold. So you don't want to put something with really fine details because then it'll be more complicated. So you could do something like that. Or maybe you want to do some lines. It's really up to you how you want to make your design. So lots of different things you can do when you're thinking about this. Once you've figured out how you want your design to look, your next step is going to be to trace it onto the sticky foam. So it's really easy because this is a very soft foam. All you're going to do is take your design on paper. You're going to put it over the foam, and you're just going to press down with your pen to trace your outline. I like to run the pen over a few times just to make sure I get a good impression. After you've traced that, you can't really see it on this camera, but you can see there's a light outline from my pen where I put a little indentation. Next thing I'm going to do is take the pen again, and I'm going to trace that outline so I can see it better. If you're really confident, you can even freehand this directly onto the foam, and you don't need to use a scratch paper. Okay, so let's just start with those three shapes. So after you've drawn out all the shapes that you want, you're going to take your scissors and you're simply going to cut those shapes. Again, super easy. You can do this with kids. And don't throw away any scraps because each piece can be reused for something. Now, while I'm cutting this, I realized that the pieces that I cut away, I actually kind of like these shapes. So I think I'm going to incorporate this into my design as well. So now you're going to take your paint stick. You're going to take your little shapes that you just cut out, and you're just going to peel off the backing. One of the nice things about this particular foam sticky is it's actually movable. So if you put it down and you decide you actually don't like the way it looks, it's super easy to just take it off and start over again. So I'm going to take those scrap pieces, because like I said, I kind of like how these look now. And I'm just going to kind of place them to make a different design. There's no right or wrong to this. It's completely your creativity, however you want to do it, and whatever is meaningful to you. So once you've figured out how you want the layout, this is your modern day ohekapala, your modern stamp. So once you're happy with your design, what you want to do is you want to test it with the paint. Before you go ahead and print your bag, however, I highly recommend printing on paper first because you want to see what it looks like with the paint on it. So you're going to take a little bit of paint. So the paint that's included in your kits is actually a water-based paint. So that one will be better for paper, or if you're doing something that isn't going to wash right away. But if you wanted to do something more permanent, like you wanted to put it on your shirt or you want to put it on a bag, you might want to get either screen printing ink or some kind of an acrylic paint. This acrylic paint is from, I believe, Walmart or Target. You can get this anywhere. So you're going to take either your sponge or your brush, or in this case, a sponge brush. You're going to put a little bit of your paint on a piece of paper and just get some ink on the sponge or the brush. and you're just going to dab it onto your stamp. So you're just kind of lightly touching it like this. You don't want to do strokes, because if you do strokes on your thing, you're going to get paint all over the stick. And also sometimes when you actually print it, you're going to end up with streaks. So it's easier to just dab it on there like that. I actually prefer using these sponges, sponge brushes over a paintbrush. Okay, so once you've gotten paint on all the pieces of the little sticky stamp thing, then you want to test it out on a piece of paper. So you're going to lay it flat, hold it for a little bit, just kind of push it down, and then you want to lift it directly up. You don't want to lift like this or an angle, because you're going to end up messing up your design. So lift the stamp straight up, and you should end up with a print. Now keep in mind, as I said earlier in the presentation, when you're thinking about your design, you want to remember that this is something that's going to be repeated. So normally what I would do is, after I've made that first print, then I'm going to continue printing that till I fill whatever space I'm using. So and then go ahead and stamp again so that you have a repeated pattern. One tip I do have, if you're trying to do a large space, like let's say you wanted to do this on a kihei or on like a tablecloth or something, is to use painter's tape to create your lines. So if you use painter's tape to line up the area that you're going to stamp, you'll have a better likelihood of getting straight lines. But for this one, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. So again, you're going to go straight down, tap it lightly, and then lift it straight up. And as you can see, it's a little wiggly here because I didn't go straight down. So that's one thing you have to be careful with while you're doing that. So ideally, if I just filled up my whole paper, what I'm going to end up with is a really cool design. So let's go ahead and test it out on our canvas. And you're just going to line it up on the bag and just figure out where you want to stamp it. So it's totally up to you. If you want to just put one stamp on your bag, you can do that. If you want to cover the whole thing, you can do that. Totally up to you. And again, lift straight up. And here we go. Now we have a customized hand-printed utensil kit. You can actually use this multiple times. And again, like I said, this isn't a permanent adhesive. So if you decided you wanted to adjust your design, you can do that later. Or if you wanted to just peel it off and do a whole new design with the rest of the sticky stamps that you had. This is just a basic painter stick. You can get these at Home Depot. This sticky stuff you can get from any craft store. Ben Franklin sells this. Make sure it has the adhesive back. It's a little bit easier. And you can use this to decorate anything. You can decorate your utensil bag, your clothes. You can even take that little paper bag that we gave you with your kit, and you can turn this into a handmade gift bag. So lots of potential uses for this, and we hope you have fun. Don't forget to send us a picture of your final product so we can share it with our campus. Thank you.